Hello viewers, welcome back to Mythology. In this session, I'll give you important tips so as to attempt questions on differentiating between given pairs. What you've got to bear in mind is you should write the differences in a tabulated form. The points on which you differentiate between the pairs should be compatible points. And thirdly, the points need not be explanatory. You just give the exact concise point with terminologies if possible for citing the differences. So try avoiding long sentences for differentiating. Let's take examples and then prepare you for such questions to be attempted. Here on the screen you can see you have to differentiate between endocrine glands versus exocrine glands. We come across such questions, then we start writing in the tabulated form. So the first compatible point on which we will begin differentiating is the presence or absence of ducts. The endocrine glands are ductless glands. This will be enough as a point. And the compatible point against this point on the endocrine gland towards the exocrine glands, we will write exocrine glands are ducted glands. That is, they are provided with a duct. But you only need to write exocrine glands are ducted glands. The second point, we will try to answer about their type of secretion. So, endocrine glands secrete hormones, while exocrine glands produce enzymes. I think these 2 points would be enough the way I spoke to you. You need not stretch them into longer sentences in order to again explain the hormones and the enzymes just in the question on differentiation. Let's go to the next one. In order to differentiate between a food chain and a food web, we will try to hit the point on its definition. A food chain is a linear sequence of organisms for eating and being eaten up. But on the side of food web, you must write these are interconnected food chains that exist in an ecosystem. The second point on which we need to give the difference would be about the availability of alternate sources of food. In food chain, there is no alternate food source available at the trophic levels. But in food web, the trophic levels are usually provided with alternate food sources. And a third point, if we at all want to attempt, we will go to find its stability, like a point on stability of the ecosystem. If you want to mention, food chains cannot establish stability in an ecosystem, while food web can bring better stability to an ecosystem because it provides survivability by giving chances with alternate food sources. Let's go to the next to find out how do we differentiate them. Here we are trying to differentiate between the autotrophs and the heterotrophs. instead of the point being written as autotrophs and heterotrophs, if you are asked to differentiate between producers and consumers, the points would indeed tally in a similar way. So, if we are going to differentiate between autotrophs versus heterotrophs, the first point would be on its photosynthesis. So autotrophs can perform photosynthesis. Heterotrophs cannot perform the process of photosynthesis. Comes to the second point, for the autotrophs, they do not depend on any other organism for obtaining their food, but heterotrophs have to depend on other organisms for obtaining their food. These are the two basic differences. Generally, when we differentiate between a pair, giving examples do not make a marking point until and unless you are stretched out with a point in the bracket against the terms for which you have to give the differences. So, in case you have to differentiate by giving examples, you know, all those who can photosynthesize, like the green plants, and indeed some of the bacteria who are chemosynthetic, they could also be under the autotrophs. But heterotrophs are all the other organisms, including animals, in large numbers, who would fall under heterotrophs. Next we have biotic factors versus abiotic factors. Biotic factors include the living organisms of an ecosystem, whereas the abiotic factors include the non-living environment present in an ecosystem. Now, the next point which we might explain or just give validity upon would be what is included under biotic factors. So biotic factors include not only plants and animals, but they also include microorganisms like Monera, Protista, as well as the fungi. Whereas in the abiotic factors, since we have the non-living environment, which includes the sunlight, temperature, air, water, and the soil. If you think that do we have a third point on which we can give a compatible difference? Yes, you do have. Like the biotic factors are all capable of reproducing by themselves. But comes to abiotic factors, they are generated in an ecosystem, but definitely at the cost of recycling by the biotic factors. We go to the next to find out what we need to differentiate. Now, xylem versus phloem. With the image that is shown, you can see the xylem with the arrows being shown coming upwards. So, the xylem conducts the material only upwards in the system, that is from the soil to the tip of the plant. But when it comes to phloem, they distribute the materials in both the directions, that is from the leaves to the lower parts of the plant, and also from the lower parts of the plant to the higher parts of the plant body. And second point, we would see what does it transport. Like xylem transports water dissolved with minerals. Like phloem transports food in the plant body. We can have a third point of difference, like xylem is generally made up of dead cells. Here if you do not use the word generally or mostly, then this would make a incorrect point. Why? Because we have xylem parenchyma which is living. Either when you write xylem is dead, you have to give that exception that xylem parenchyma is living. But if on the other hand you write mostly xylem cells are dead, then it makes an absolute correct point which you mention. Comes to phloem, most of the phloem are made of living cells. That also is a perfect point without any mistakes. But you cannot write all phloem cells are living. That will be a wrong point because we have the phloem fibers which are not living. Next we go to the differentiating between the calyx and the corolla. Calyx is the fourth outer hole of a flower. That is, when we start from inside to outside, the fourth outer hole of a flower is the calyx. Comes to corolla, this is the third hole which is interior to the calyx of a flower. Then the next point we would discuss on its color or in its functional activity. So comes to calyx. Calyx are generally green in color. That's why they are capable of performing photosynthesis. But corolla are mostly brightly colored, and thus their function is to attract pollinating agents. I think these 2 points would be enough for making the differences. Or you want any other extra points, you can cite examples of calyx and corolla under their sizes. Usually the calyx is not as well developed as the corolla, where the corolla are larger, vibrant and very colorful as well. Let's go to the next point for differentiation. Pistolate versus staminate flower. The pistolate flower may instead be written as female flower and the staminate as the male flower. So pistolate flower will lack androecium. But if it lacks androecium, what it must have? It must have the gynoecium amongst the, essential whole. So, pistolate flower is an unisexual flower that possess gynoecium. And when we come to the staminate flower, we will say a staminate flower is also an unisexual flower who possess androecium. Now, the next point would be for a pistolate flower, you can write any of the structures which is present in the gynoecium makes a part of the pistolate flower, like ovary, style and stigma are present in a pistolate flower, whereas the anther, filament, and the pollen grains are present in a staminate flower. These are easier points to, hit upon, and that indeed makes even smaller points to describe the differences. Budding versus regeneration. The pre-requirement for budding is the production of an outgrowth on the body of the mature organism like Hydra. For regeneration, there should be the body of that organism like Planaria should be cut into pieces or it gets broken into parts. Now, the second point to put up compatible difference between these two is a bud should become heavy enough to detach from the parent and then fall into an environment which has all available factors for its growth into a new individual. While for regeneration, the Lord cut parts itself has the power to regrow into a complete individual. This is not always a case with regeneration. Regeneration is sometimes referred to as the ability to regenerate the lost parts or regrow the lost parts. But regeneration to produce more numbers of individuals is also not rare. It is indeed seen in planaria and also possible in hydra. I hope you got a clarity for attempting questions on differentiate between the pairs. These questions are highly scoring as long as you put them in tabulated form, write on compatibility of points and keep it short and precise. Thank you for watching. Please do like my video, share it with your friends, those who may find it useful, and to never forget to subscribe to my channel. Happy learning. Wish you a good day.